Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon if you're watching this pre-recorded. My name is Andrea Kendall. I am an LCSW, and I provide outpatient therapy at our outpatient behavioral health office. And I do therapy with all kinds of folks, but a big proportion of the kids that I work with are teens, and that is sort of one of my specialized populations. So I call this, I'm so tired, because I feel like I hear this a lot from teens, at least my teen. And it's just about trying to make sure that your teen gets enough sleep. And so this is stuff that I've sort of gathered from things that I've researched and professionals that I've talked to, and also in my own practice working with kids and parents around trying to get enough sleep and also sort of not get into power struggles and all of those kinds of things. So why is teen sleep so important? Decision making. In general, teens are more likely to make choices on impulse, seek excitement and engage in risk-taking behavior, focus on short-term gains, have difficulty delaying gratification, be susceptible to peer pressure, and fail to anticipate the consequences of their choices. So they're already dealing with all of this. And all of these decisions that are bigger decisions than they've been faced with before, that require cause and effect thinking. And poor sleep is linked to higher risk taking. So we really want teens to get as much sleep as they can, so when they're faced with these big decisions, they can kind of bring it all forward and use all their best stuff. A mood regulation, that's pretty obvious. We know teens have a lot of mood. It's a lot to navigate. It's a difficult time in life. And it's going to be even harder for them to deal with sort of the emotional highs and the frustrations and the disappointments. And, when you're a teen, everything feels like life or death, even if it's just a grade on a paper. And so they really need the sleep that's optimum for them so that they can manage those moods. Another big one is drowsy driving. Let's see if I can. Drowsy driving, very dangerous for everyone. I think it's not quite discussed enough that, a lot of times folks who are out late at night, it seems, I was coming back from so-and-so's house, or, I got up at 6 o'clock this morning to go to cross-country practice, and they're also newer, less experienced drivers, and so drowsy driving, missing a stop sign, nodding off can have really serious consequences, and we don't want that. And that's even a discussion you can kind of have with your kids if you're talking about getting your license or driving privileges, that, hey, part of this is going to be making sure that you get enough rest so that I know when you're out on the road, you're safe and you're not going to fall asleep. Academic performance is another big one. School, we ask a lot of our kids, we ask a lot of sustained attention. We are asking them to process a large amount of information at one time. We are asking them to sort of maintain this, so in the afternoons and in the evenings, they have to sort of continue using their critical thinking, and so they really need that sleep to help them perform. And as we know, the stakes get a little bit higher in high school. Kids are sort of, trying to get into advanced classes or tech programs, or, worried about SAT scores and grades for college, and so we want them to feel like they're sort of at their best when they're doing all these things that feel like they have sort of big life outcomes. So what are some of the challenges for teens getting enough sleep? For one, surprisingly, teens need more sleep than 10-year-olds. I know we all think, and certainly I did, as they get older, they need less and less. But teens actually need 9 to 9.5 hours to support what developmental psychologists call the second phase of cognitive maturation. So they are going through a second phase of cognitive maturation, and they need this sleep to help their brain make that change. And of course, physical growth spurts as well can also be very draining. So one of the things that makes this really hard is that adolescents get tired later. Changes sort of in their development sort of mean that the melatonin gets released a little later, and so unlike smaller kids who get tired 9, 10, you will notice your teen is like, I'm trying to go to bed early, I am just not tired. They are not tired until about 11 or 11:30. which isn't so bad all by itself, but as we know, the older you get, the earlier school tends to start, especially if you're doing advanced things or outside activities or governor's school. And when you live in sort of a more rural area,
it's like a half an hour long. I just check on him.
30. And so it's impossible to squeeze, obviously, if you do the math, it's impossible to squeeze 9 hours, 9.5 hours of sleep if you're falling asleep at 11:30 and you have to get up at 6. I have a link that I'm happy to share at the end if folks want to email me about actually advocating for later school start times. This is a movement that has taken hold and really starting to move forward for optimum performance for teens and also for safety, like we talked about with drowsy driving. And certainly that presents all kinds of challenges. A lot of times the reason kids go to school when they do is to accommodate all the different school schedules and bus schedules. But when you really look at the math like this, that's pretty stark. And so, you know, it's something important to think about. Okay, what are some other challenges for teen sleep? Teens are busy, and we want them to be busy. You know, they're doing community volunteering, and they're playing sports, and they're involved in, you know, FFA or the drama club. You know, we want to make sure they have that social time with their friends. That's really important to them. That's a priority. A lot of them are wanting to work. And these are all things that are good for teens, right? We want them to do these things. We encourage them to do these things. But, you know, sometimes that means there aren't enough hours in the day. Because if you think about a full school day, and then for most high school sports, when it's kind of on season, you will practice every single evening for at least 2 hours. And so that leaves, I don't know, an hour in there somewhere between eating and getting enough rest. And so that hour has to be, you have to choose, is that for social time? Am I going to work tonight, which means I get off late? Am I going to go out and do this thing with my friends? I miss them. I haven't talked to them. So it is a lot for them to balance, and there's just not enough time. And so it's important to think about the fact that we encourage teens to do these things, and some of us as parents even expect them to do these things. You know, it's time for you to pursue your interests. It's time for you to get a part-time job, make your own money. But they're going to need some help. They're going to need some help in balancing all this stuff, and sometimes they need us to step in and advocate for them if that's appropriate. The big one, challenges for teen sleep, the phone. Most teens now have access to this device that they can take to bed with them that is very, very stimulating. And like I said, teens generally don't do the best job of avoiding temptation, delaying gratification, long-term cause and effect, and the kind of decisions you need to be making when you are trying to sort of tell yourself to put the phone down and go to sleep. Whereas adults, we might not be perfect at it, but we know, all right, I really would like to watch this last episode or finish chatting with this person, but I have to get up early, and I know I have a lot to do, so I'm going to put it down. Teens aren't so great with that stuff. They're very much in the moment. Part of sort of our current social media and phone climate means that everything is happening all the time, in real time, 24/7. And so there's this feeling of teens of needing to keep up. You know, I need to check the latest Snapchat. I need to answer this text. Or if I wake up tomorrow morning and everyone's going to say, did you see what happened? And I missed it. And of course, at that age, everything takes on this intense urgency. So it's very, very hard for teens, even responsible teens who sort of know better. You know, I work with a lot of them. They're like, I know I shouldn't have, but I stayed up playing this game, or I was talking to so-and-so and we just kept talking and talking, or, you know, I met somebody new and we stayed up late talking, and those kinds of things. It's just extremely tempting and very hard, even for teens who want to make good decisions, to put the phone down and go to sleep. Also, we know scientifically, and it makes logical sense, that when you stick your face into a bright device and the light goes into your eyes, it's going to take you that much longer after you shut it off to calm down and go to sleep. So you're delaying it even more. It's not like some kids can, but for most folks, you cannot fall asleep right when you put it down. You need some sort of time to power down. Teen sleep solutions. Definitely, if you have any concerns at all, or even just in general, check in with your child's doctor. Kids can have insomnia. Kids can have sleep apnea. You know, kids can have other snoring, sleep obstructive issues. And also, sometimes it just helps for them to hear from another adult that's not you. It's really important that you get your sleep. If you really want to do well in this advanced class, or, I know you're going out for varsity basketball, you really need to get this much sleep, and here's some suggestions. Regulate the light. I'm not suggesting that anyone go into their teen's bedroom at 7 o'clock in the morning, rip open the curtains. But in general, if you start out the day with bright light and sunlight, that helps sort of wake your body up and get you going. And then as the evening comes, turn the lights down. And so that the light sort of gives them a natural cue. Whereas, if the house is super dark like a cave, because that's how y'all like it, which is fine, I understand, it's going to be a little bit harder for your kid to regulate their sleep-wake cycle, as opposed to they come out of the room and it's bright and they can see outside light and that sort of thing. And the same thing for nighttime. I mean, a lot of families kind of spend their evening in the basement, which is usually sort of like a game room, and they tend to have these very bright overhead lights, which is fine. It's just something to be mindful of if everyone's having trouble sleeping. Maybe we need to get some lamps in here, turn the lights down a little bit so that everybody can start to kind of power down for the day. Maintain a consistent schedule. This is hard for a lot of teens because, as we've said, they're not getting enough sleep. So when they can sleep, they want to sleep, and they want to sleep a lot. And it is certainly okay if it's a school holiday, if it's a weekend, we're all going back to regular in-person school this fall. If it's a Saturday, yeah, you can sleep in. You don't have to get up at 6:30 or 7 like you do. But what you don't want is sort of the week being, well, I go to bed at midnight, I get up at 6:30, and then the weekend being, I stay up until 4 and I sleep till 1. That's too big of a gap, and it's too hard to regulate, especially, that means come Sunday, they have gotten up at 1 o'clock, and now in order to go to bed and be asleep, like enough to get even sort of a decent amount of sleep, they have to go back to bed in a few hours, and it's just too hard for them to make that switch. And it'll happen from time to time, certainly, of course. But generally, it's a good idea to at least have them up by morning, as in before noon, and have them go to bed not too far from their bedtime. And you can negotiate with your individual child kind of what you feel like makes the most sense. Help them balance their schedule. Like I said earlier, we want them to do all of these things, and we encourage it, and it is good for development and success and for peers and self-esteem for them to be playing sports and clubs and working. But teens tend to be kind of all or nothing, and so they need adult help sometimes trying to figure out what needs to shift and what needs to give. And without making the decision for them, you can sit down and say, hey, would you like some help? I noticed that you want to take, AP Chemistry and AP US History in the spring, but that's also the season of this sport that you want to play. What would you like to do? Would you like to split them up? Or maybe you can do both those things, but you won't work a lot of hours in the spring. Just helping them figure out, okay, you can't do everything. Let's find some give and take. And also carve out some time for them to just have fun and be kids, which is important too. We don't want kids to sort of feel overregulated. Get them active. A lot of times when I'm working with families and the parents say, wow, things have been a lot calmer and a lot more settled, and everybody went to bed on time, and I say, oh, wow, cool. What did you do? And the parent says, I wore their butts out. We went out, we raked the whole yard. We went on a family hike. I said, everybody get in the car, we're going to pick strawberries. Or, I said, why don't you bring all your friends over and we'll have a bonfire and a water fight. Just stuff that encourages them to get outside rather than just sitting in front of a screen, because that's sort of a natural sleep aid. If their body is that tired, they'll go ahead and fall asleep. Naps. Everything that I read said that naps can be good to help them get enough rest, but you have to keep it short, or you sort of dip into deeper phases of sleep and it's too hard to get back up, and it can sort of mess up your sleep schedule for the night. But, 30 minutes to an hour, you can say, hey, you seem really tired. Before you go start your shift at McDonald's, why don't you lay down on the couch for a little while and I'll wake you up in an hour. Or, when you get home from school, why don't you rest for about 30, 45 minutes and then get up and I'll have a snack ready for you and you can kind of get started on your homework. I do have some kids sort of get into this rut where they stay up all night, they get up early for school, and then they come home and they sleep from about 4 in the afternoon until about 10 at night, which is very problematic on a lot of levels. So of course you may have a day here and there where your kid comes home and they're just so exhausted and they take a long nap in the evening, but generally it's not a good idea. Teen sleep solutions, electronics. This gets its own whole section because this is kind of the big deal. This is the toughest stuff. If you can, move TVs and gaming systems out of the bedroom and into common areas of the house. And just be matter of fact about it. Hey, you know, it's just better for all of us if we sleep. You know, no one's saying that you can't play the PlayStation or that you can't watch a movie late. We're just saying it's going to be out here and not in your room because that's just better health. And then you have to sort of model that as well, which means that you power down your own devices, or if you have a TV in your room, that you leave it off and you go out to the living room or something to watch your show, and then you turn it off and go to bed. And you just kind of set this example that, you know, bedrooms are for sleep and other rooms in the house are for electronics and leisure. It's really nice if you can get out ahead of this. If before a child gets a gaming system or their own TV, that you just sort of set it up, not to be in your room. But that is not always an option. These things are certainly, you know, easy to suggest and difficult to do. And we will get a little bit more into that. Powering down laptops, tablets, cell phones, they should be turned off and turned in for the night at an agreed upon time. This is really, really, really hard. It's really hard, but it's important, and it's something good to strive for, even if you don't get it perfect, that the child does not have access to their devices 24/7 in their own room without supervision. Because again, even teens who make good decisions have a hard time delaying gratification, seeing the consequences of their actions, and really shutting it off when they need to. They're also just not as good at recognizing when they are exhausted and worn out as we, the adults, are. And so sometimes they're going to need those external cues before they realize how tired they are. All right, troubleshooting. No common area. Some families, you know, their space is at a premium and there is no common area where you can put a TV that everyone can get to it. You know, there was a living room, it's being used for something else. Or, you know, it's just very chaotic. Nobody can watch TV out there. It's too loud. And so, you know, that's definitely a thing. So there may be times where these things, devices, electronics, game systems, they have to be in bedrooms. If you have a lot of siblings, having electronics in bedrooms allows for alone time, keeps siblings from fighting, gives them time away from each other, especially sort of an oldest sibling who wants to be able to play a game without the younger kids kind of interrupting or wanting to play. And you kind of feel like, well, that's something, you know, as a big brother that you've kind of earned, that you get to have your PlayStation in your room. And that's understandable. Another big issue, I bought it. We have kids working out. I bought it, so it's mine. And it's mine, and you can't take it. Or they say, oh, but I need it. I have to fall asleep to my music that's loaded on my phone. Or it has a white noise app on it, and I have to listen to that when I fall asleep. Or that's my alarm. Or I've got a paper due, and I have to sit in here with this tablet or this laptop until it's finished. Or I'm waiting for so-and-so to get back with me to give me the notes so we can finish this project that we're supposed to be doing together. And another big one, of course, these are teens with a power struggle. Just that the idea of us taking something away or limiting access to something that is very pleasurable to them is going to result in conflict, and sometimes just as a matter of development, they're going to kind of dig in their heels and really kind of fight you on that. So what do you do? Negotiations. And I always recommend have these discussions before bedtime, before the issue becomes a conflict. So, you know, Friday night when you're sitting around pizza, or, you know, Sunday morning when everybody's eating their pancakes, say, hey, I really think that it would be a good idea for us to have some kind of rules around phone use or TV or whatever. So what do you think is a fair, if you were the parent, what do you think is a fair time to turn it off? And then you sort of negotiate back and forth. You may not get to a common ground, but sometimes teens will surprise you, and at least you ask for their input, and so they feel like they have some control. A really important part of that negotiation, well, two things. One is structure. You need to make it out very, very clear. I would even write it down, hang it on the fridge so that there aren't arguments about, I thought you said this and I thought you meant that, and then arguments about, well, why? And if it's on the fridge or on the wall or in their room, you could just point to it and say, it's right here. You know, we all agreed on it. You don't have to like it, but it's right here. The discussion's kind of done. And then figuring out rewards and consequences ahead of time. Same thing. If the child does not comply, the child's team does not comply, we want to have set out really clear ahead of time what we're going to do about that. Because when, as parents, if we're sort of confronted with a power struggle, we tend to yell, get mad, try to lecture and explain to them why we're right, or we tend to come down way too heavy on the consequences and take things away for weeks or months, which not only is ineffective, but just really tortures everyone, us included. So I usually try to make it tied to the youth in a way that makes sense. You know, if I swing by your room at night and you've got everything turned off the way you're supposed to, awesome. We can keep having it in your room. If I, get up to go to the bathroom at 1 o'clock and I see that you're playing your game, well, then I'm going to take it out for a day or two, and then we'll try it again, and we'll see if you can earn it back by sort of being decent about that. And we'll just kind of see how it goes, and we'll negotiate that way. And then doors open and spot check. If your kid is going to have the electronics in their room, you can say, well, that's fine, but your door needs to be open, and I won't kind of be standing there the entire time. But just know if I walk by, I'm going to stick my head in, and I'm going to make sure that you're, getting ready for bed when you're supposed to be. The other thing that I like is spot checks, which means you're not always going to have to hand me your phone or your tablet, but you need to know that if I ask for it, you got to hand it over right away. That's the deal. And if you don't, you'll lose it. And if you do, I look real quick, I see what you're doing, I hand it back. So that keeps from having to monitor constantly, but they know at any given time, my parent might pick up my phone and be able to look and see kind of what I was doing. Which brings me to my next kind of set of tools, as I say. And it's down here, the third one, but apps that monitor screen time or shut off access. I'm certainly not an expert in this, but I know many parents that are, and certainly there is Google, but there are a lot of apps that either will simply let you know how long your kid has been on, or will even shut it down at a certain point, and so that they can no longer, they have this many hours of screen time a day, and that's it. Because what I don't want is any parent getting in a physical tug of war with the cell phone. That never leads anywhere. Or any device, really. And that can also give them a chance to earn some trust. All right, I'm not going to take it away at night. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this app on it, and every few days I'm going to take a peek, and if you're doing great, awesome. I'm so proud of you. And if you earn enough trust, guess what? I'll take the app off, and I'll trust you that you're doing what you need to do. And then if you start to slide a little bit and you're really cranky in the morning, then the app's going to go back on. I love this little graphic down here at the bottom about sort of making the children earn the Wi-Fi password. But you can turn off the Wi-Fi, you can change the password, and so that's a way to sort of make sure that you're sort of monitoring the access and how much. And if you sort of feel like, I just can't trust you right now to get off this phone, I'm shutting off the Wi-Fi at midnight. That's the deal. It goes off at 12. You can take cords, you can take routers. I had some super amazing, clever kids who could do things through Alexa to get things to turn back on and access things. And so sometimes you have to get creative, but you can. You can also, if you do not want to have to physically take the phone away from the child and the kid holding it in their room or put it in their car or gave it to somebody to hide, you can contact your provider and say, I need you to shut this phone off for this many hours or this many days. And that brings me to, what I was saying before about kids saying, I bought it, it's mine. And I had a lovely police officer who worked with kids and families who informed me many years ago that actually, if your child is under 18, basically what's theirs is yours. So you can limit access to the devices. You can't sell them, you cannot damage them, but you can take them away. So don't let that sort of get in your way of feeling like, oh, well, gosh, since they bought it, I have no control over it at all. Not true. So those are just some basic tools. Obviously, this is a very challenging thing, trying to figure out how to get your kid to go to sleep and put the phone down, and I don't mean to make it seem easy. And so I am always available through calls or emails or ideas, thoughts that you might have, other questions that I didn't cover here. So here is my contact information. And like I said, I welcome calls or emails. And here's hoping that all your teens, I love this picture, that this is what they're sleeping well and this is what they look like at night. Thank you.